The new woke version of CD Projekt Red opens up about The Witcher and Cyberpunk. Are you excited? I am not.
Salutations, everybody. It is Maddie here today. If you've ever doubted that your comments don't work on YouTube videos, I'm here to tell you they absolutely do. Now,
Yeah,
I mean that most times in that, like, hey, your negative comment can upset someone's day, your positive comment can turn someone's day around. But today, it's more about the content itself. I was sitting down going through the comment section in yesterday's video, and someone actually asked me about CD Projekt Red content and how things have been kind of dry for a little bit on that front for me. And I went, well, nothing's really happening, right? And as I looked into it
theoretically they are happening, which is not a positive in this case.
more, we actually recently got some pretty important news on the outlook of CD Projekt Red, which impacts Cyberpunk 2, which impacts, most importantly, The Witcher 4, which I'm really curious to see how they carry things forward after The Witcher 3. There's a lot going on in the world
There's no more Geralt of Rivia. Now there's gonna be, I don't know what, probably a playable female, which is gonna be great.
of CD Projekt Red, and I was like, dang, I missed all this. And I normally comb through the news with like a fine-tooth comb because I do Defining Duke every week, so I set up all the news there. So here we are talking about CD Projekt Red. So thank you for the comment, thank you for the idea. So why don't we not delay any further and get right into it? The headline that really drove me to wanting to make this video was this one here, saying The Witcher 4 is the most advanced game CD Projekt Red is working on right now, ahead of Cyberpunk 2 and The Witcher remake. One of the reasons
Yeah, we kind of heard this news. Most advanced doesn't mean it's good, though.
I wanted to talk about this is because when you read the headline, it suggests something to you far different from what is actually happening here. Like when you see advanced, you're probably thinking technologically, oh, they're pushing the envelope here. While that may still be the case, that's not exactly what's being talked about here. So let's dive a little bit deeper into this interview with Pal Sasko, where Games
Okay.
Radar writes, that's according to Pal Sasko, associate game director on the Cyberpunk 2077 sequel. Speaking on the Flow Games podcast, Sasko wasn't able to give much detail on any of the upcoming CD Projekt Red games, but he did give a rundown on the whole bunch, explaining that The Witcher 4 is by far the furthest along. Sasko echoed statements from a CD Projekt investor call in May, which itself reaffirmed plans stating that The Witcher 4 will enter production later this year, outlining The Witcher 1 remake, Cyberpunk 2, a somewhat troubled spin-off project series.
The Witcher 1 remake is gonna have changes so modern audiences can appreciate it. Yeah, yeah, let that sink in for a minute. Oh boy, exciting.
We'll talk about that later. And the new Witcher saga starting with The Witcher 4, Sasko notes that the latter game is the most advanced of all of those. Crucially, that's advanced in the terms of how far along it is, not how impressive its tech is. CD Projekt
Was that the quote? Wow. I guess who cares?
still isn't really talking about The Witcher 4 as a game so much as an internal idea, and it's likely that games like Cyberpunk 2, set to release after The Witcher 4, will push the technological envelope further. Sasko also reiterated that The Witcher 4 has a main part of CD Projekt's workforce behind it, saying that most people are working on Project Polaris. If you actually look at this post
Yeah, we know this.
from the investor call in May of this year, you'll see that the development team has moved entirely off of Cyberpunk 2077, which is the yellow bar. You'll see in February 2024, it was 17. It's now moved to none. So Cyberpunk is completely done, and most of the staff is on Polaris at over 400 developers, with 56 working on Orion, the sequel to Cyberpunk, and then 39 working on Sirius. And Cyberpunk just got what is very well its last, I put in quotes, updates. It's a game audio pack that's a team up between the Immerse game pack.
Oh boy, people are pissed about this. This is just literally money, please, money, please. And we saw how this plays out, and it's actually not that great. It's kind of daunting at places, and it just doesn't. It kind of feels off.
And Cyberpunk 2077 over at Embody. And it's basically finely tuned audio.
Not that finally. I mean, it's good at points, but it's kind of pretty bad at some points. it's not exactly anything even remotely closely worth $20 that you expect.
More spatially focused, and I have not tried it out myself, but it's about $20 if you're really interested in that like high quality audio experience, which I know can elevate the game for a lot of people. But
An omen to come, honestly, by some considered.
that's really it. So it's kind of hard to believe after all these years, but Cyberpunk is pretty much done. We knew that Phantom Liberty was the final expansion. They weren't going to do more beyond that. We knew they were tapering off, but after all these years of support, it's like, man, I kind of missed that. But it's funny. It's something I've actually talked about a little bit on this channel, where I mentioned how with Starfield and Cyberpunk both ending their journeys at the same time, there's just going to be this lull on this channel where there's not really a lot of my usual core games to talk about here in the rotation of two of my favorite developers to cover here. Okay. There's really just BioWare at this point in time. But yeah, that's what we got here going on with Cyberpunk. So all attention is on The Witcher 4. 400 plus developers, and we're now hearing it's the most advanced project out of the bunch, which is kind of to be expected.
People are not happy with The Witcher 4. People are pretty upset because the story of The Witcher has ended. The last Witcher pretty much just wrapped everything nicely up. Every story is kind of done. People are saying the only thing that possibly could be a continuation of the stuff that you know from Witcher 3 is Ciri, and that's kind of it. And I mean, people are not really too excited about that, needless to say, obviously. So The Witcher 4 is going to be kind of completely new thing, new take, new whatever. And again, we're talking about CD Projekt Red. Now, a couple of years ago, before the disaster of Cyberpunk 2077, it was looking good. But after that, CDPR Red got sued by 3 major lawsuits that they most likely settled on, and they lost because there was no way they're winning those bad boys. It was absolute disaster. They 100% lied to the investors. They did a lot of things, okay? And after that, surprisingly enough, 3 lawsuits that are threatening the pretty much cancellation of the studio, a complete bankruptcy situation. And somehow they survive. And lo behold, not even a couple of years later, they're suddenly winning woke awards. Literally awards for advances in diversity and all of the poison that you see in modern games. Interesting.
With how much attention it's getting. Now, what's also interesting here is the consistent mentioning of a project in trouble over at the Molasses Flood who's working on this project series. They right here, another interesting snippet from this portion of the interview is the conversation that the Molasses Flood, the indie studio working on the somewhat difficult development of Project Sirius, is working with Sasko in the new Boston studio that he's helping set up. The developer only joined forces with CD Projekt Red in 2021.
Hey, they named themselves Molasses Flood because they're in Boston, because Boston had that Molasses Flood incident where there was a lot of molasses on the street. It was literally flooding because a couple of giant containers, tankers, or whatever they are supposed to be, just exploded, leaked, or whatever, and people were drinking molasses off the street. Now, if you were a fine gentleman at the time, you took your boot and just poured a little bit of molasses and drank it like that. But man. Yeah, that's a good name. That's a good name for a Boston studio, Molasses Flood.
It's only since then that this Boston studio has been established. That suggests that CD Projekt Red is offering a little extra help and expertise on the new project, which is intended as a game for fans of The Witcher on Netflix, then RPG players. So yeah.
Wait, what? Fans of The Witcher show on Netflix? That's probably the worst audience ever because 1, they don't exist. 2, everyone hates them. 3, they're pretty much gone. Oh boy, imagine Witcher 4. And it's supposed to appeal to the people who like the current Witcher show. Horrible. Absolutely, without question, without exception, atrocious.
There's a real big onslaught of Witcher content on the way. We already had that like Monster Hunter style game on phones. Now we're going to get Project Sirius, I imagine, probably ahead of The Witcher 4. At least that's my anticipation, especially because we've had more happening on the front of the Witcher TV show. Like, we've had this whole Cyberpunk phase between the launch of Cyberpunk, Edge Runners, as well as all the support leading up to Phantom Liberty as sort of the cherry on top. So now I kind of view it as like a changing in the guards. Like Cyberpunk is going to go quiet, and now it's The Witcher's turn to really just go all out. And I'm very excited to see what happens next with this project series.
It's probably going to be something to akin Dragon Age Veil God. Not good, AK.
Being in trouble, I feel, is an overestimation by some of the game's media based on how they've read a situation that I'm reading a little bit differently. It sounds like The Witcher's Sirius project has been rebooted. Yesterday, on March 20th, CD Projekt had made a regulatory announcement regarding expenses incurred thanks to development of Sirius. In short, the expenses from the developing of the project have increased, with CD Projekt noting that it will, quote, accordingly burden, end quote, the company's next financial results. They say the aforementioned decision is based on results of evaluation of the scope and commercial potential of the original concept of Project Sirius and ongoing work on formulating a new framework for this project. The announcement ends, making clear which project exactly is responsible for the increased financial burden. Separately, it was described here that the project will offer multiplayer gameplay on top of a single-player experience, including a campaign with quests and a story. And in a Q&A, after the financial report, they clarified that Project Sirius is not a mobile game of any kind, and that they are talking about broader demographics, meaning that they want to reach people through the Witcher games that are watching the TV show and not exactly hardcore RPG games.
Oh god, yeah, that sounds horrible. Hey, let's make a game for the tourists who don't like the original IP and are just, social justice type of warrior people. Yeah, let's make a game for them. I'm sure surely this time, they will actually just buy the product. Said no one ever. Well, it has never happened. These people just like to virtue signal about things. They will never support the product. They literally cannot be asked to care. Stop trying to pander for these tourists, these rogue demographies, because, man, how many failures do you need to see? Nothing woke succeeds nowadays. It's just all a giant flop. Look at Hollywood. Look at the games industry. Look at Ubisoft. Look at Blizzard. Look at everything. And you're still like, ah, yes, modern audiences, what a great idea, ha 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 ha. How about the Witcher fans? Yeah, I'm sure between watching paint dry and sniffing non-dried paint, they're gonna buy your game.
So yeah, I think Project Sirius being in trouble sounds like a poor read of the situation, at least right now, until we get some official confirmation. I say that because we have a game here being worked on by 39 people, which isn't a lot. It's got multiplayer functionality. It's doing less RPG stuff, which likely means it's going to potentially be more live servicey.
Yeah, that's exactly what I want to hear from my Witcher game, from my Cyberpunk game. Less roleplay, more microtransactions. Yeah, that's exciting.
And that's interesting because we did have a Cyberpunk game that was supposed to be multiplayer coming out at some point, and then that got shut down. And so this is probably where their efforts are going. And this could say to us right now that, hey, the scope is increasing. I mean, again, if you go back to that image of how the staff was shifting, it's a small shift, but this project in Sirius did gain 2 developers over that course in time. So I'm not talking about that being a dramatic scale up, but the reality is they are giving it more time and attention. Now, the Boston Orion studio is also working on it. So it's possible it's getting fattened up a little bit more. I don't know if this really says to me that, oh, the project's being rebooted. It could just be being rescoped, like, hey, this is too small for what we're trying to do here, because CD Projekt Red has a habit, for better or for worse, as we've learned, to take a big swing. I mean, we're seeing that right now with this new phase of theirs where they're bringing in the new engine. They're doing a Cyberpunk sequel. They're doing a Witcher remake. They're doing The Witcher 4. They're doing a smaller spin-off Witcher game. It's insane. Like, there's just a lot going on at this company. So I don't view this as them rebooting. If anything, I view it as them rescoping and saying, like, hey, we can swing big with this, and this team is just known to consistently do that. Palisasko also talked a little bit about Easter eggs, and this may sound irrelevant, but I think it is extremely relevant because the Easter egg in Cyberpunk 2077 kind of seems to be pointing to something that will make a lot more sense when we get to the sequel. So they actually mentioned here, there are things that you can find and unlock, and our assumption was that when you play, some people will spend a lot of time trying to work it out. He continues, But CD Projekt Red staff apparently designed these convoluted secrets to be easily findable once they've been solved. Secrets like FF06B5 might have been a
Wasn't this like the biggest mystery in Cyberpunk?
nightmare to unscramble in years past, but triggering the final cutscene is a piece of cake once you have a step-by-step guide that someone else put together online. That was the way we designed it, Sasko explained. We designed it to be incredibly difficult to do, but we didn't want everyone to go through the super difficult path because it is a bit tedious. We wanted everyone to enjoy it. The community managed to do that. Then everyone can enjoy the spoils of war. Yeah, what's actually interesting is this whole entire Easter egg actually spread into the Witcher 3's next-gen update. But then we finally got a cutscene that is very ominous, is very strange. You see some sort of figure in shoddy clothes appear at one point in time. When you wake up, those clothes are on the ground and you're just kind of out in the middle of nowhere here. Following this whole Easter egg cutscene, you get this weird set of symbols when the cutscene opens as well. So what we're seeing here is things gradually building toward the Cyberpunk sequel. And I know this may sound really crazy, but bear with me. I would not be surprised at all if you found some sort of Easter egg pointing to more information on Orion tucked deep, deep away in The Witcher 3 that we'd have to dig up for years. That's just the way this company is angled. And for those of you who are excited about The Witcher 4 and are looking for a little bit more Witcher 3, this will really appeal to my audience in particular because we cover a lot of big mods here on the channel for Bethesda Game Studios. And one company that's really like close behind or neck and neck with Bethesda Game Studios, not only in how they do their games, like for example, Cyberpunk 2077 is extremely immersive in a first-person environment, which is what I love about Bethesda Game Studios games, but it's not just the game style, it's also modding. There are now official mod tools in RedKit that function pretty much similarly in the terms of their purpose.
Well, I can't wait until for the moment when someone makes a better Witcher 4 than, well, Witcher 4 is going to be. And that's pretty much it, I guess. Anyway, that was Mr. Manic Plays, 10 out of 10. It's looking grim, not gonna lie, boys. Bye.